Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Connie.
Hello, Connie.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm like brain damaged now.
One will do that to you.
Yes, it will. I don't know how you do this for a living. Give me nice, clear criminal statutes.
Oh.
If you knife somebody, you're guilty of aggravated assault. That's simple, you know? You don't need 100 pages of convoluted language to come up with something.
It is very true. I mean, so many of our statutes are just written so that, I mean, they could be clearer if they were Greek.
Exactly. This one was particularly bad.
Oh, Act 1 is very bad. Very, very bad. The school code can get like that too.
I would imagine. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because I've just from hearing, the talk that's going on at school board meetings, I thought, wow,
For some reason, my dog has decided he wants to sit in my chair with me while I'm at this meeting.
Aww.
So camera off. I see.
Oh, what a cutie. That picture is my first Great Dane, Arthur. He died, but I've got another Great Dane, Deacon, now.
Oh.
Who, Deacon, was in the building where the fire was on Holly Avenue today. The building where my office is on Holly. Mark Helbling was working in there, and this electrical fire broke out in another office or something. He grabbed an fire extinguisher and put it out. But I just kind of said, "Oh, he saved my dog." It wasn't that big a fire, but it was cute.
And when I do meetings from home, he decides he wants to sit here. He thinks he needs to be part.
Yeah.
Oh, and Connie, I hadn't seen Molly's email to the whole group until later today, so I figured I would just address it tonight.
Yeah, I didn't see it until I just came on maybe a half an hour ago, so.
Hello?
You're here.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if I was talking. It's going in and out.
We're waiting for people.
Okay.
I think we've got Ron. Ron's.
Hey, Connie, it looks like Ron is the only one that we are currently waiting for.
Who are we missing?
Ron.
Just Ron?
Yeah, I see Sam, I see Carolyn, I see Christine, I see Sabrina and Molly, you, me, Justin.
Okay. That's who I forgot to count was Carolyn. 'Cause I'm thinking we only had 7 there. Okay, let's give him a couple minutes. He didn't tell anybody he wasn't coming, right?
Not that I know of.
Okay, well, let's get started and maybe Ron will appear at some point, hopefully. Yeah, so right now we've got everybody present except for Ron Bettison. And Jody, I think we haven't approved that one set of minutes, correct? From 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, does anybody?
And in light of like the fact that we got the transcript from last week and that's already been posted, so I didn't even do minutes from last week.
Yeah, I don't think you need to, but that was really fast on transcripts. I've waited months for them. But okay, so does anyone want to make any changes, or do we make can you make a motion to accept the minutes from, what was that date? April 15th? Yes, April 15th.
I was not present for that meeting, so I would like to just note into the record that I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Somebody else, motion?
I'll make a motion for those minutes to be approved.
Second.
Do we have a second? Molly?
Second.
Okay. Everyone in favor of approving the April 15th minutes? Please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Connie, this is not an opposition, but I will take the same position as Justin, not being present for that meeting as well.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Amy Schrumpf is here from the solicitors. So, Molly, we just saw before we started the meeting your email, and Amy was going to address that as well as any other questions we may have about Act 1, just to clear up everything here.
So first, Molly, I think your question was if there was any certain way that your recommendation needed to be worded. And the answer to that is no. There's no legal requirement for your motion, your recommendation to be worded any way in particular. It would be our opinion that if you were going to recommend, you should kind of tailor it to that language that's keyed in the statute, you know, like that algebraic formula, like the tax commission hereby recommends blah, 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 with all those numbers filled in, or doesn't recommend. And I think that would be sufficient. I don't think you need to worry about anything other than that.
We don't have to make any other conclusions about what we found, or we just let our data, which we submitted, speak for itself.
Right, you're not required to do any kind of findings or any kind of conclusions. You're just required under the statute to make a recommendation.
Okay. I'm asking because we spent some time on a presentation that we thought we were supposed to make for the public hearing. And there was just some back and forth on what that should, what kind of information that should include. And I'm just trying to prevent us from having those kinds of disputes or conflicts here at the end. That if there's some kind of information or presentation that we have to put forward, I imagine that there would be different input that might take time of what that should be. So are you saying maybe it's easier to just give them with does not recommend or recommends in the paragraph that we've already seen of what the referendum would be?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think that that's what your recommendation is going to be to the school board.
Okay,
Either
That was-
it's going to be a vote up or a vote down, right?
exactly. Anybody else have any questions regarding that or anything?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Amy, as far as, the frequency of ballot referendums, is there a kind of a frequency that something is allowed to be introduced? If it's introduced now and it fails, could it not come back on for 4 years? Or if it's not introduced now, could it be introduced next year? Or are you locking yourself into not reintroducing or changing something by this action?
No, there's no limitation in Act 1, like you're barred from reintroducing something in a future year.
Okay, and no frequency. I guess someone had just mentioned to me, like the, Bellevue's liquor ordinance, like it didn't, it took 4 years for it to come on the ballot again. I don't know if that was like a legal requirement. That's what I'm trying to get to.
It depends. So it has to obviously be in a certain type of election. So if this was a presidential year or a midterm year, it couldn't go on the ballot. It has to go on a municipal election year.
Oh, okay.
So that's your only limitation is it has to be in an election cycle that fits.
That has municipal offices during that election cycle as well?
Correct.
So do we have cycles where there are no municipal?
Sometimes.
Yes, we have the municipal elections every 2 years.
Okay. So there's some elections that are only, I guess I didn't realize that. So by definition, there are some that are exclusively. Okay, so every 2 years is what we're talking about. Okay, great. Thank you.
Amy, may I ask a question, please? In terms of the wording, we say recommend or not recommend. Is there any additional language we could use, like, for example, pending something, or we seek something, or something along those lines? Any other kind of proviso? Maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
You mean you want to say something like, if A then B, and if C then not B, or something like that?
Yes.
You could certainly make that recommendation.
Okay.
If there was something like that.
Okay.
Again, you're making a recommendation. So you could say, if, and I'm going to make, you guys dealt with me before, I like to come up with outlandish things. If the moon rises purple tonight, then we would recommend. And if the moon rises black, we would not recommend. You could certainly do that.
Okay.
Again, I apologize for the lack of creativity there, but.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
But then, Amy, would we need to have a motion or have some agreement on what the wording would be if we're going to change? What I understood was the legal language that was already given to us by.
Well, there is no legal, your recommendation is your recommendation. There's no legal requirement for your recommendation, except that a majority of you all agreed to it.
Okay. Can you also just make clear one more time, because after you sent your explanation of the fixed EIT rate that would be in the referendum, Connie, I'm not sure exactly what your email maybe acted like that was still up in the air. So I just wanted you to confirm that what we are deciding on is that fixed EIT rate, and that anything that would happen to adjust that or change that for any reason would be a separate act that the school board would take on of their own accord.
You are voting on replacing, you're voting on taking your homestead exemption up to the maximum and then funding that with increased EIT. The referendum would set a ceiling on your EIT. That's your ceiling. Obviously, there are other reasons to go out for other referendums to set another ceiling. But again, it would have to go to referendum.
Okay, it would have to go to referendum again.
Yes.
So what would happen if 5 years down the road, the 50% median value mark is way higher than it is now, but the current rate, the revised rate of the EIT is still lower? Then what
So,
do we do?
Connie, Tony and I actually had that conversation today at the office. The median, what you're setting your median homestead refund to is also set by this. So if you're funding up to, again, I'm just going to make up numbers, $30,000 in homestead exemption, in assessed value that you're going to exempt, that is set as well.
Yes, but what if the EIT revenue received isn't enough to fund that?
Well, it should be if your calculations today are right, you should continue to fund what your median is.
But
If
we
you have
don't know.
if you have an income problem and your income dropped significantly in your, like, let's say you have $4 million wage earners that live in the Northgate School District and they all decide in the same year that they're gone and they're somewhere else, and you can't fund that any longer with EIT, there is no way to raise that EIT. That's what you guys were studying, really.
Okay, now what if it was reversed? What if we set this new EIT rate and we get far more revenue than we need to fund the homestead exemption? What
So
do we do?
the statute speaks to that. In year 1, you cannot make a profit. In year 2, you can only make 2%.
Mm-hmm.
And in the additional years, you can use it to fund district purposes.
Okay, so that money can go into be used by the school, and consequently they would not have to perhaps increase their millage rate or something else.
Correct, and that's after year 3. Year 1 is revenue neutral. Year 2 can exceed by 2%. And so it's 2% of the increase that you're receiving of EIT. So I looked at your numbers and it's something like 2.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So 2% of 2 million is $40,000. We're not talking huge chunks of money.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that I came across when I was reading Act 1 is that the EIT rate, if we change it, did I understand that it needs to be set to the nearest 0.1%? So we've been worrying about 0.64 or 0.66 when it's either 0.6 or 0.7.
Correct. When the school district takes it out to referendum, it has to be rounded to the nearest 10th.
Okay. All righty. Okay, does anybody have any other questions for Amy about this process or Act 1?
Yes, I do, Amy. Just to confirm one more time that the EIT rate would be set in the ballot referendum. So therefore, if there were going to be any adjustments to it, that would not be something that voters were agreeing to at this juncture. So it would be something that we know is allowable, but it would not be apparent to voters in any language as it's written, just a set EIT that we're going to raise it to this amount to fund the homestead exclusion.
Your EIT will be set. It'll be capped at whatever the voter referendum has.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have another question. So what you're saying about the homestead exemption, it would be a dollar amount that's set as opposed to the percentage that's set. Is that what you're saying? Correct.
That's the language that was provided in the statute for the way the referendum reads, because you need to come up with actual law.
So in the future, is there any way to then remove that exemption, or that exemption would stand like for all time? Just, Does that make sense? Like if
I
you wanted to
understand.
say,
If you suddenly decided you didn't want to fund that, it's not in the statute. I'm going to be honest with you. So I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I can't tell you. The statute is the Taxpayer Relief Act. So the
right,
statute doesn't speak to taking that away from people.
right. Okay.
Sorry, that's my best
Yeah,
answer.
no, I was just curious.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Amy, thank you very, very much. You've definitely been a big help to us, and we appreciate
you.
your time. So go play
And
with
I
your dog.
understand Act 1 is confusing, and we argue about it at our office.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a great scenario for like a law school moot court or something.
Everybody would fall asleep. It's not the most exciting. But I look forward to seeing you what your recommendation is.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, I'm going to really leave this up to you. I would like to hear from everybody what your feelings are. It's entirely possible that, people are going to have different takes on this. I would prefer that it not be a free-for-all. I think we all know enough about this issue now that if someone has a different opinion than we do, we can be rather tolerant of that. I don't know if we're here to, bash anybody else's opinion. So with that in mind, would each of you just like to tell us what you're thinking, what you like, what you don't like?
I do, Connie. I know we've gone around and around quite a bit with so much information and so much data. I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to circle back to senior homeowners in Bellevue and the ones who are also very at risk with another tax increase. I just did some statistics. Actually, I took these from your March 19th email where it outlined the Census Bureau data. And it was the Census Bureau from 2015 to 2019 with inflation rates estimated. And I discovered that in 2019, there were homeowners in Bellevue. I did the range of earnings from 10,000 to 25,000. And in that time period, just in Bellevue, there were 743 homeowners in that category. In Avalon, I'm sorry, that was the total between Bellevue and Avalon. I did it also just to check to see what it was like for people up to the age of 64, between 45 and 64. And the earnings from 10 to 25,000, and that was 518 total. That's quite a few people that are at risk, as well as the other people who would be at risk with an earned income increase. So I know that our charge is so narrowly defined, but my question to Amy was, is there a proviso that we could put into the recommendation that says these people that are at risk, homeowners and or wage earners, are protected, that there is some kind of a ceiling on income, on property taxes? I don't know, but it seems to me that a lot of people will get hurt either way. Those are my thoughts. Oh, and also, I don't think these people have huge endowments they're drawing from at any point.
So can I just comment about, I believe we sort of had asked about that before when we were talking about if there was an exemption for earned income tax, like for people earning less than $12,000. And I believe we were told that no, there was no way to have any sort of exemptions for anyone, that this is like, it's a straight tax shift. So nobody would be exempt in terms of that earned income tax increase. So that means that any of those people would also be, have to, pay into that earned income tax, even in those.
That's true in terms of what we're doing with Act 1. However, the Northgate School District has another resolution that sets its EIT separate from this. And they'll more than likely have to adopt that resolution in order to have the authority to increase and tell Keystone, this is what we're collecting in EIT. And that comes under the Local Tax Enabling Act, and Northgate can, and I would suggest that we ask them to, exempt low-income wage earners up to $12,000 per year. I think we should ask Northgate and Bellevue and Avalon to do that.
But that we would ask them under something separate than our purview right now, which I'm 100% for. And Carolyn, very quickly, I wanted to let you know that I now feel that I am activated on this issue, and I wanted to let you know I've talked to a few people, and I'm putting together a team of things that we can do for senior citizen homeowner taxpayers who are having a difficult time. And I've already started the research, and I've got lots of ideas of ways that we can make an impact, both on a state level and also locally. So please get at me if you're interested.
Thank you. That's very good news, because really they're so vulnerable. They're so vulnerable. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
I guess I'll go. So my opinion on this entire thing, I've had it for quite a while, but everything just keeps getting reaffirmed. I do not believe that we should be recommending this EIT. I don't even think it should go to referendum. Per a lot of the public comment last week, it seems that many of the people who joined our call also do not believe that it should go to referendum. In good conscience, I can't look at everything that we have looked at over the past several months, and we've all come to the same conclusion that this is a bad idea. It's a very bad idea. And yes, we can say, oh, we think it's a bad idea, but you decide. We're the ones who've studied this. We're the ones who've been tasked with, putting forth this recommendation. And here we are, one of the last meetings that we have where we're going to decide what we're going to do. And we still have exponential numbers of questions about the minutia of how this would even work. I don't believe that we should be recommending this, and I don't believe it should go to referendum. That is my opinion.
Thanks, Justin. Jody, I just did you see that Ron was here?
I did notice that he showed up right when we started, like right after Amy left. He
Yeah.
Hi, Ron.
Okay. Did you want to talk, Jody?
I do. I actually, I wrote down some of my thoughts, so I'm just going to kind of read to you what I have written down, if that's okay. So we all know that the scope of this law is really narrow, and that there are a lot of things that we can't do with this commission. So we all know that the taxes are challenging, but the law that this commission was formed under states that we're only to offer a recommendation to the school board on whether or not they should put it on the ballot. And our job is to see if it's worth it to the school and the community for them to have people vote. Overwhelmingly, the data and research we've looked at shows that this would likely cause harm to a majority of residents who would only see a tax hike. Additionally, the fluctuation and instability of earned income tax could possibly cause a budget shortfall for the district. Earned income tax increase could drive renters from the community, which would further reduce earned income tax revenue. I think it's a slippery slope that ultimately could cause our school and our children to fail. And I for one, am not willing to take that risk. And so I will vote resoundingly with the majority of commenters from the public hearing, and I do not think that we should recommend this. That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else want to go next?
Connie, I'll go.
Thank you.
Yep, I was saying mine will probably echo a lot of sentiments, apologies, from our commission members, including Justin's and others. From very early on, I've had the same opinion that a lot of the public commentators had, being along for the process, seeing how confused and murked up we were by all the data, knowing all of our educated positions that were put together. I don't have the good conscience either of having this be on a ballot for voting or even going to the referendum, knowing the data we've looked at, knowing the inconclusions we've been able to make of the feasibility of us pulling this off, in addition to the conclusions we have made highlighting the harm that this potential proposition could bring to our renters in our community, especially to our senior population and the demographics that make up our renters.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Anybody else? Sabrina?
Yep, I was just unmuting myself. Yeah, my position has pretty much been solidified. I mean, I guess, you know, when we started out, I mean, some of us came with a semi-blank slate, and some of us had more knowledge, but either way, as we proceeded through this, our focus began to, actually from early on, from the first meeting, we started talking about, as we introduced ourselves, we started talking about why we felt we could be an asset to this commission and to the community that we're serving through being on this commission. And it was all human-centered, and it's been human-centered throughout every single meeting. We've all seemed to have come to the same conclusion. And I don't think that at this, I just don't think that this is something that we should be offering to the people because of how complex it is, how we still have questions, how we are not lost, but it just doesn't seem like the solution to the bigger picture. And so by listening to the public commentary that happened last week, not only do I agree with the people who are saying that we should not recommend this, but I also saw that there were still gaps in education from the public. And so if that's happening both in this commission, because there's just so much to learn and so much to infer and so much to think about in terms of a future focus, and the public still doesn't understand, I think it would be irresponsible and also inconsiderate to pass this along. So that would be what I say.
Thanks, Sabrina. Ron, Christine, Molly?
So this will come as no surprise that I agree with what everybody else has been saying, that we've done the math and we've studied it and we've seen what the impact would be and that it is a bad idea. And since our job here is to tell whether or not we would recommend doing this, then we should recommend that it not be done and therefore not be put on the referendum, because it was hard enough for us to come to that conclusion. There's very little chance that the public at large is going to be able to reliably vote on that the way that we could. Sorry, that's all I had to say about that.
Thanks, Ron.
Hmm?
Molly, Christine? Let's go with Molly. She's looking at me.
Oh, it's hard to tell what I'm looking at. I wasn't actually, but I'll keep this brief because I think there's no surprise. I mean, when we saw on, I think the first night that somebody had prepared a PowerPoint that said that this was unfavorable to renters and that it was also volatile, I questioned why we were even here. The lawyers told me those were not findings of fact yet. And so I guess I went out and I've learned more and more and more that those are absolutely findings of fact with deep nuances within them. I'm against this for so many reasons, but one of them is because this would have, we can know that since 95% of homeowners are white, even with houses that are multiracial, like my own, that the 35% of non-white students in the district, the majority of them are probably going to be in households that are going to be paying double, paying property taxes through their rent and also being taxed in some way. And I think we've talked kind of callously about whether or not they can afford it. And what I think is, no matter what, I wish that we were a community that wanted our students to have whatever extra resources that they could have. And I've become increasingly, I think, both disturbed, despondent, and also really, really repelled by the casual way this commission has talked about human lives and the way that we have talked about racism and systemic racism in terms of statistics. I think that would shock our children and grandchildren in the future with the way that we've talked about this. And I think it's been somewhat barbaric. And I hope that in the future we can, as a community, come together and stop doing that and stand up for humans. This experience has rattled and offended my sensibilities as a human person. I'm against this for sure.
So you're against it going to referendum?
You tell me, what did I just say?
You didn't mention the referendum. You just said you were
absolutely 100% do not recommend. And then since you've given me a chance to speak again, I'm going to say it. I'm also 100% offended as a human person by the way that we've discussed this the whole way through, and that it's taken us so long to come to something that we knew was unfavorable to a large group at the very beginning, and we still continued forward. It's not okay to do so.
Christine?
Sure, I'll go last. So yeah, I guess last week was also kind of a wake-up call for me, you know, with the public commentary, and I guess just to reset the stage, which I kind of thought that, you know, everyone knew where we were coming from on this, but in 2017, there was a referendum on the ballot that 56 out of 67 counties passed to exempt, to increase the homestead exemption, which is what got me thinking about what would that do for Bellevue. So that's when I started to say, what would happen if that happened? I'm a firm believer in digging into things. It did pass at the state level, and that's why I thought it was more than worthy of taking a look at. At the first meeting, I did it for myself, and I walked, you know, everyone through an analysis of what it looks like for a new homeowner versus a legacy homeowner is what I was calling them. And Justin, you told us an anecdote of someone that could afford to live in Bellevue, but once the bank saw the taxes as well, they were no longer they were no longer able to afford that and moved, I think you said, to a neighboring town. So my impetus in studying this was to help people, to help elderly homeowners. I wanted to know, was there going to be an option for us to do this exemption, which I think would be a great idea, which could only come about by discussing it. So I do think we should speak to both the school and both towns about those exemptions. Again, information that I already knew, but became you know, kind of in my face, is that Bellevue's earned income tax rate is double that of Avalon's. So that's something that we're living with right now. So a renter on Lincoln Avenue pays double what a renter on California Avenue pays. So that's something to just think about. Those two towns are the two towns that comprise our district. So that's pretty, you know, disparate right there. We saw that, and some of these things, I mean, I'm going to bring back to the board from a financial perspective. I mean, they're out there. We know what the local capacity of our residents are to fund our school. And it's higher than what we can afford. It's demonstrated by the fact the state does give us more funds because we can't afford what it takes to run our school. Governor Wolf is putting forth a suggestion that personal income tax be raised to help fund our schools. So clearly, that's happening across. Our tax structure is from the 1600s, funding it based on property taxes, and the fact that our assessments are so unfair, and that's nobody's fault. But a new homeowner, so one of the people that spoke said, I'm a new homeowner. My house is assessed sky high and I have a decent income. So I'm going to get a marginal improvement and I'm still going to pay this earned income tax. So certainly that's not what we want to happen. We want to help older people stay in their homes. And I would like to help other people be able to afford to buy homes in our community. So we're talking about gentrification, and a $300,000 home with a $7,000 tax bill is going to certainly shut out a lot of people. So that's why I'm really glad that we studied it. I definitely don't think with what we're allowed to do, not having a progressive tax rate or any kind of exemptions, it does make me not in favor of this. The reason why I asked is when could we potentially look at this again, is because I think we should continue this conversation. So I'm very happy that we did it. Like I said, I agree with Sabrina, some of the comments that it would hurt the elderly, that it would benefit commercial properties. I mean, I'm stunned that, that's out there, and naturally who wouldn't be opposed to that. So I'm not in favor, but I'm very much in favor of continuing to study it, and for the benefit of all citizens, which was what I hoped, we would come to this meeting with that spirit in mind. But that's where I stand. But I do thank everyone so much. I know so much effort went into this.
Okay, well, let me tell you that my perspective on this from the beginning has probably been, clearly it's been a little bit different, because we've never really discussed some of the aspects that were really motivating me. Like most adults, I rented for many, many years before I was able to buy a home. And, you'd get into an apartment and then the landlord would change and the place would become a mess. And it was just one nightmare after another. What I wanted more than anything was my own home. And I had choices that I had to make. I wanted to practice in public interest law, which doesn't pay a lot. I didn't want to be a corporate lawyer. So I knew my ability to buy a home was going to be iffy. And I was well into my 30s before I was able to purchase my home. And the way that I initially saw this is that Northgate's millage rate is out of control. It is harming anybody who wants to invest in this community. It's just too high. So we deal with the issue of senior citizens, which I am in that group, but I also look at young and lower income residents. What we know by looking at projects like Habitat for Humanity is that people are healthier, they have more job stability, and they get a better education when they are in their own homes. And for many years, every time the state assessment test scores have come in, Northgate has said, well, we have all these transient families. These students are coming in at the middle school level or high school. We don't know what type of education we've had before. We're trying to play catch up with them. What if these people, instead of being renters, who may be forced to move every year or two, what if they could be homeowners? And so from the beginning, I was looking at this as a way that we could make more people in our community homeowners, because I think that would be great. And there are always going to be people who want to rent for whatever reason, because they're in a transient stage of their life. Senior citizens, I know a lot who rent for mobility reasons. That's going to happen. But I think of these younger families who are forced to live in a rental situation that may not be ideal, that may keep them moving from apartment to apartment, town to town, school district to school district. And I want to bring their ability to purchase a home in our community to make that more feasible for them. So that's really what I've been focusing on. The problem that I have with all of this is, number one, Act 1 is a crap law. It could have been a whole lot better all the way down the road. It's just ridiculous. But the other thing that concerns me is that increasing the EIT rate without having that ceiling or that low income exemption, that concerns me. Because anybody who's making up to $12,000, maybe in that case, $3 a month may be too much. And there's no reason why we should be taking their money. Not Northgate, not Bellevue, not Avalon. So I really like the idea of pushing this into a way that we can make housing more affordable for lower income homeowners. And that might be something that we can do in the future between Northgate and Bellevue and Avalon. And as Sabrina has a lot of history and experience with blighted properties, maybe we're not ready for this right now, but I think it could be something that could be used to help a lot of people. But the thing that I keep coming back to is taxing people who make less than $12,000 a year. That seems so wrong to me. That is my big holdup here. So would anybody like to make a motion? Go ahead, Jody.
I was just going to ask, did everyone speak? Because if so, I would like to make a motion that we not recommend this for referendum.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's do a roll call vote on it. Just make sure we got everybody. Can you do that, Jody? Do you have everybody's name?
Yes, I can do that. So we can just go through and we'll start with Ron.
Hello.
Just say yes or no.
I vote we do not recommend this referendum.
Okay, so my motion was to not recommend. So you would vote
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Do not recommend it.
Okay.
Language.
Okay. Molly.
Yes, do not recommend.
Sam. Sam.
Sam, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Maybe just, oh.
Yep. I'm open now.
Okay, so the motion was to not recommend this for referendum. So you can either vote yes or no to not recommend.
I vote a yes to not recommend.
Okay. Christine,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Sabrina, Sabrina,
Muted.
I was muted, sorry. Yes.
yes, okay. Um, Connie, oh, Christine, or I'm sorry, Carolyn. Yes. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes, and Connie.
Yes.
Okay, so that is a unanimous vote to not recommend this for referendum to the school board.
Is everyone comfortable with that simply being our wording that we present to the school board, that we do not recommend that it be placed on the ballot for referendum?
I know there was like some longer language that had been used in something previous, but that's fine. I mean, if we want to just keep it simple, I feel comfortable with that.
Well, we could put in that we do not recommend an increase in the homestead exclusion with a comparable increase in EIT rate. We don't recommend that that be placed on the ballot. They gave us the wording on that, so we'll just fill in the blanks. I think they laid it out for us where all we have to do is say recommend or do not recommend. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fine with me.
Okay. I did have some conversation with Michael Ryakovic from the school board president, and Dr. Johns about how they wanted to handle this at the board meeting. You know, they're going to put us on the agenda. Tony said that he just thought it would be appropriate for them to recognize the chair. At that point, I would read our recommendation. I don't see any point in going beyond that. I mean, if you guys all want to be at that board meeting in case they have questions about why we voted the way that we do, that you may all want to chime in there. Given that we have made this decision now, do we want to cancel next week's meeting then?
I don't.
For the meeting next week, or what would be some things that we would cover?
The only thing that we were going to cover at that time was the wording of our recommendation, and I think we've pretty much pared that down tonight.
Right. So no, I think that is
I will email everybody before we go out, before it goes to the school board, but it's just going to be that one paragraph.
Quickly before we adjourn, if that's what's coming up, I just wanted to say to Christine that I noticed that you were bringing up the 2017 amendment frequently throughout our time together. So I finally looked it up, and I just wanted to set the record straight that that amendment doesn't have anything to do with our work that we've been doing here, and that it was put on the ballot, and it won across the state, that everybody agreed that the homestead exemption could be increased to 100% if they empowered the legislature to do that. But the legislature would always be doing that by again replacing the property taxes with some other mode of funding, and that is something that you have not explained or chosen to add into this, but just kind of acted like it was going to be a blanket erasure of property taxes. But always these tax conversations are going to be shifting the burden and the payment around to different places, and of course it is totally unfair in the way that things are assessed. And even right now, I noticed somebody named DeSanto has put forward a constitutional amendment in the state of Pennsylvania to make it illegal for school districts to collect property taxes. But of course, they're responsible for coming up with some other way of doing it. So we're always going to have have taxes, and even I've seen some other conservatives put forward the idea that that we shouldn't fund public schools at all for whatever reason. And I think education is everything. I think that's a popular slogan, and I hope we can be generous about all of the things that we fund, but especially funding education for our children. And especially, Christine, I have to say, as a member of the school board, I implore you as a parent to please put the students first, and maybe let's stop our obsession with the taxpayers or the stakeholders, as we've called them
Molly,
as well.
I think you're really just getting way off topic here.
That was inappropriate. I'm going to say that finally, especially because we've all come to a unanimous decision. It seemed like to me, especially because we have been, first, I want to address the fact, since we're addressing things that have nothing to do with the decision we were making.
It does have a decision. She's talked about the amendment the whole way through.
And
and we don't have the information about it.
That's adulthood 101. So try to partake in that.
I think that's what's going off topic. I'm specifically talking about,
because you just went on a spiel and you keep doing it. So I'm asking that I have the floor for just 2.2 seconds, and then you can keep on with the theatrics. What I'm asking you is that you respect the fact that we did everything that we could to reach a decision using as much research, using the time limit that we were permitted. So when you talk about how we were barbaric in the decision making, that's disgusting, and you know it is. The language that you always use to try to describe people and to always try to tear people apart because you just, for some reason, you can't cope with the fact that we all reached the same decision. We all agreed. Why can't you accept that? So for you to use the end of this meeting to try to specifically attack somebody when we've already decided, we already had our vote. So you're using this to just be as divisive as humanly possible. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. And I don't want to be targeted and be called names, called out of my name, be interrupted consistently, have to listen to your dissertations. We already came to the conclusion. And instead of you just being okay with that, you decided to take an opportunity to tear people down. Why are
No, I'm taking the opportunity to set the record straight about why we're doing this, and it's not from 2017. And I will not pretend that it's normal to talk about race and to talk about those who are economically underprivileged the way that we have talked about it in this forum. I don't want that to be normalized because that is not okay.
But you're being a bully the entire time. That's not okay.
What's not okay is labeling me as theatrical for talking about a political philosophy that I believe in.
You just labeled us all as barbarians.
Okay, guys,
proceedings have been, in my opinion, barbaric.
Either one of you. I know.
Inhumane.
Molly, you are so far out of line that I can't even see the line anymore. We've made our decision. I think everybody here has been extremely respectful and concerned about our residents and our students, and we may have different ideas about how they can best be helped, but that doesn't mean that anybody's right or anybody's wrong in the overall scheme of things. So the personal attacks are completely out of line. Let's behave like adults here.
Okay, well, for the record, I don't believe that I put forward any personal attacks, but to be clear, are talking about actions and are talking about information that has been put forward, and the way that we're talking about things. Ms. King is the person who has championed this commission. And so if it's for the reasons of 2017, I just want to point out that information wasn't correct as it was put forward. And I then don't appreciate having my advocacy labeled as theatrical, because that is not the way that I intended in any way at all.
Well, that's the way it's coming across. And there were 9 school board members who voted to appoint this tax commission Christine has never at any time during this process attempted to direct us in one direction or another. All she has done is put out the numbers and let us think for ourselves. And she
Well-
did a heck of a lot of work here. So can we just leave it, Molly? It's just unfortunate that we've tried to work together, come to a conclusion here. We're all in agreement, and you can't be satisfied. You have to poke and try to go after somebody else.
I think that that what's happening is my position is being characterized by other people, and kind of blanket talking about the way that I come across. And I just want to point out that I noticed that, and because it's being characterized a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's true.
And the same could be said for everything you've said about other people.
Yes,
So,
but the same
can
could
we
not
now
be true for the way that
go
I've talked
on
about
to
factual things.
Can we go on to our public comment now, and then we can adjourn during this meeting, because I don't think this is getting us anywhere. Does anybody from the public wish to speak?
Jane
Go
Bromley.
ahead. State your name and address, please.
Jane Bromley, 27 East Rose Ridge. I am sorry, I disagree with all you guys on this board. This is supposed to be the Taxpayers Relief Act, and I don't see us relieving the taxpayers at all. I lived here for 27 years. Taxes keep going up in the school. And yeah, there are very poor people that live in this community that own homes, and they're going to be forced out because they can't pay the taxes anymore. And I do not know why you do not want poor people to buy property in Bellevue. Are you afraid the poor might be living next to you? I mean, give us a break. We need help too. So it's Taxpayer Relief Act. You were the commission. This is just all going to go away now. And where's that going to leave everybody? And if Bellevue residents are paying more in the EIT tax, what is that all about? And Connie's absolutely right. Yeah, there should be a limit on this. So obviously this whole commission needs to go back or continue forward to figure out how to help the poor people to buy homes in this area and the elderly to stay in their homes. Because guess what? Social Security, don't get it. You're not going to pay your taxes with Social Security. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks,
Thank
Jane. Anybody else from the public have a comment they want to make?
Nope, too scared.
Nobody? You hear somebody making noise? No?
That's probably me.
Okay, well, can we then have a motion to adjourn for the final time?
So moved.
Somebody second that?
I'll second.
Who's it, Sam? Okay. Everyone in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All right, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.